What do Parker Brothers' classic detective game, The Man in the Yellow Hat's best friend, and Fantastic Mr. Fox's favorite swear word have in common? Like the games in this video, they all start with the letter C. I'll be honest, I like all the games I'm about to talk about, but I'm not that excited to talk about them. The games I like talking about the most are the ones that I have strong opinions about and are more obscure. But these games are in the completely opposite Venn diagram. I like them just fine, and they are pretty well known. But you're welcome to my lukewarm takes all the same. I also do not feel strongly about the order this time. What I went with as my number one is mostly down to the fact that it's the game I have the most settled feelings about. Ask me again in a few months or years, and we'll see how I'm feeling. This could actually be the third or fourth weakest letter from the first half of the alphabet for me, which is really down to my personal tastes because there are a lot of great games that start with C. As always, this list is limited to one game per franchise. Comment your favorite C games below. I've actually been introduced to some cool games through comments on these videos, and if you want to show your appreciation for the channel or just the Latin alphabet, like and subscribe so you can keep watching these as they come out. This time around, I really debated which game would claim the number 5 spot, so I'll make the case for a few other games in honorable mentions, but I eventually decided on number 5, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is the game that put the Vania in Metroidvania, so if you like non-linear platforming and combat, exploring a massive two-dimensional labyrinth, and discovering dozens of secrets and upgrades, it's absolutely worth going retro with this one. I'm not, crazy about Metroidvanias, but some titles, like Symphony of the Night, make a pretty strong case for the genre. This is not a game I grew up with. I played it for the first time more recently, so I feel qualified to report that this game holds up even without the nostalgia goggles. You play as Alucard, the half-vampire son of Dracula, hell-bent on infiltrating and destroying his father's castle, which has magically reappeared after collapsing in the previous game. Tag yourself if you were today years old when you found out Alucard was Dracula spelled backwards. The Castlevania nerds out there will point out that this name is significant with respect to the themes of the game, which involve flipping a few other things on their heads. No spoilers, I guess, for a game that's almost 30 years old. In his quest to conquer Castle Dracula, Alucard also teams up with Maria Renard to search the castle for Richter Belmont, whose family are the more usual series protagonists, and I guess I won't spoil what's going on there either. I think the story here is cool and worth experiencing, but not mind-blowing and not really what I enjoyed about the game. What I enjoyed was the gameplay loop of exploration, discovery, and risk-taking as you fill in the map further and further away from the last save point, fight monsters with swords and spells, uncover hidden passageways, and unlock new abilities. Compared to something like Hollow Knight, Alucard feels like an absolute giant, so the hitboxes take some getting used to, but combat feels fair and engaging. Your powers include transforming into a wolf, a bat, or a cloud of mist, which frankly is a very overpowered traversal ability, but that makes it all the more fun to discover. Honestly, I don't know what else to say about this game, and that's mostly because it's an archetype of a genre we all know pretty well by now. If you know what a Metroidvania is, then you know exactly what this game is about. It was interesting to think about which aspects of Castlevania have proved to have an enduring legacy, and which were better confined to the dustbin of history. For some reason in the 80s and 90s, designers were obsessed with making enemies that continuously bombard you from one side of the screen in a never-ending stream, no matter how many you kill. I guess they didn't want rooms to become boring, but there are some who might call this design choice extremely irritating. They also hadn't figured out that giving players single-use items or abilities leads to those abilities never being used. It's also kind of interesting that Symphony of the Night came out after Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, and Super Mario 64, so 3D games were already mainstream and Konami was just still committed to making this kind of game. So, you don't have to jump on the latest graphic trends to make a game that people enjoy. I've gone back to a lot of classic games, and they don't all hold up. I'm sure they were all good and influential in their day, and if you grew up playing them, you're sort of grandfathered in. But some games, even as recently as the 2000s, are really hard to approach with modern design ideas in mind. That doesn't apply here. Despite some jank, I had a really good time with Symphony of the Night. It was satisfying to play through and satisfying to beat, and I'm glad I did. Number 4, Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk is such a mixed bag. I'm probably not alone in saying that this is a game I wanted to love and ended up liking a lot, but not ultimately falling in love with. I love the Witcher series and I love sci-fi, so I was excited to see what CD Projekt Red would do with a cyberpunk world. And I think the best word to describe this project is ambitious. They pretty much tried to shove every cyberpunk trope and possibility you can think of into this project, which I think was never destined to fully succeed, but it's kind of a shoot for the moon and you'll still land among the stars scenario. Despite some elements that fall flat or don't work for me, this is still a crazy cool world to explore, with an epic cyberpunk story of revenge, redemption, and humanity. You play as V, a mercenary/netrunner making a name for themselves in the concrete jungle of Night City, which itself is as much a character as anyone else in the game. After a run-in with the Arasaka Corporation, V inadvertently downloads the digital consciousness of an anarcho-terrorist rocker played by Keanu Reeves, and the two reluctantly team up in an effort to separate their consciousnesses, take down Arasaka, and put a few other things right. You can choose your backstory, Nomad, Street Kid, or Corpo, and customize your version of V into a brute, a hacker, a soldier, or dump points into cool, and talk your way out of any situation. You can equip baseball bats, katanas, SMGs, or smart weapons with tracking bullets, and for a price, Ripper Docs can upgrade your anatomy with cybernetic enhancements like armor plating, advanced optics, or retractable mantis blades. You can also upgrade your cyberdeck to deploy quick hacks against enemy cyberware, security systems, and other technology, which was ultimately my favorite way to play. I do think Cyberpunk has really cool skill trees, although I will say, while this game does let you approach situations in a variety of ways, you have to be pretty committed to role-playing at times to make certain approaches work. I feel like a lot of the times the most interesting ways to play are also more difficult or suboptimal. I wasn't that committed to role-playing, although I did try to engage with a lot of different systems. I generally tried to avoid combat through stealth or hacking, but a lot of encounters devolved into firefights, and I just kind of went with it. By far the most impressive thing about Cyberpunk 2077 is the world of Night City. I mean, the world building and the production value here are an 11 out of 10. It is unreal, the attention to detail in everything from the environments and backgrounds to the menus, the UI, the character design, and the soundscape. Just the number of fictional companies and products and advertisements in the game is impressive, and I know they were drawing from Mike Pondsmith's tabletop role-playing game Cyberpunk, so they didn't invent everything whole cloth, but it's crazy how deep this world is. This is one of the games that can make a claim to being pure immersive cinema. And when I think about games with this level of artistry, I always think about how fun it would be to show this to someone in the 80s. I think their mind might explode. That said, when I compare Cyberpunk to other massive cinematic titles, like Red Dead Redemption, Ghost of Yotei, or even The Witcher 3, I do think those games are a lot more engaging in the gameplay department. A lot of the missions in Cyberpunk feel less self-directed and more like you're along for the ride. And sure, the stuff that's happening is awesome, but a lot of what you're doing is just go here, infiltrate a place, and kill or avoid the guards inside, then kind of passively witness the story unfold. At times, Cyberpunk can veer a little too much into interactive movie territory, and don't get me wrong, it's a good movie, but I think other games have married gameplay and cinema a bit more successfully. At the end of the day, I had a good time with Cyberpunk. I thought the world was really cool. I liked all the futuristic slang, like klepping eddies or flatlining corpos, and a lot of the game's systems are really interesting. I know I'm critiquing this game a lot for a game in a top 5 list, but I think that reflects my extremely high hopes for the game. And I guess I've been pondering ever since this came out why a game that seems so tailored to my interests didn't have a bigger lasting impact on me. As much as I liked Cyberpunk, I don't really have a desire to replay it, but I would absolutely engage with another CD Projekt game in this setting, if we eventually get one. I'm glad this game exists. I think it's worth checking out, and I'm always glad to see established developers experiment with new IP. And if you want to immerse yourself in a cyberpunk world, this is far and away the most detailed and thought-provoking one ever produced by the medium. Number 3. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This was the surprise mega hit of 2025, and if you weren't expecting to see it here, it's probably because you forgot Expedition 33 was a subtitle. Expedition 33 begins in the tragic if surreal French town of Lumière, which is situated under a distorted Eiffel Tower. For the past 60-odd years, the citizens of Lumière have been the victims of a strange affliction called the Gommage. Every year, on the horizon across the sea, a mysterious figure called the Paintress paints the next number in a descending sequence from 100, and on the day of the Gommage, every citizen who has reached that age is dusted like Thanos just snapped his fingers. In an effort to put a stop to this, the citizens of Lumière launch an expedition each year of those about to reach the fated age, none of whom have ever returned. This year, the painted number is 33, and so the mostly 32-year-old members of Expedition 33 are about to embark on, well, this game. Expedition 33 is made up of 3 main components, those being the story, the world, and the combat, and I'll talk about each in turn. The story in Expedition 33 is excellent. It's original, surprising, and packed with melancholy, desperation, and heart. The members of Expedition 33 are probably the best part of the game, and to a man are well-crafted and well-written. I think a lot of the writing, dialogue, and voice performances will really stick with people. One minor bummer is that you can only use 3 characters at a time in combat, and the game doesn't really incentivize you to swap your roster around, so you kind of end up picking a core trio and sticking with them for the whole game. I ended up mostly using a girl gang of Maëlle, Lune, and Ciel, so in some ways those are the characters I got to know the most, but all of the characters had really interesting backstories. Almost everything that happens after the expedition leaves Lumière is a spoiler, so I'll try to talk about it as cryptically as possible. This game is not afraid to make big story choices, and I think that's a huge selling point. Kinda random, I had what turned out to be a correct intuition about the overall premise because I knew that Clair Obscur was the French version of the Italian term chiaroscuro, and I knew what that meant, but I was still surprised by many of the main story and character developments. I think the villains in Expedition 33, if you want to use that word, are especially thought-provoking. This is also a game with two very different possible endings, and I think a lot of the times that's implemented, there's a very clear good ending, but not so here. Both are bittersweet, and the choice prompted a pretty interesting discourse. I went with Maelle's ending because I liked her and the other members of the expedition, and in the words of Don Draper,
"Sometimes you gotta dance with the one that brung you."
Incredibly unique story overall, and probably the thing for which this game will be the most remembered. The second part of the game is the world itself, which is split into an abstracted overworld and individual locations. The environments and atmosphere here are really imaginative, and the soundtrack is really, really good. But I don't know about some of these individual locations, where you wander around, do some light platforming, and encounter various enemies. I personally found this part of the game to be boring, generic, and kind of frustrating. There's no minimap, so it's easy to get lost in the samey environment, which is something I wouldn't mind in another game, but these aren't the kind of environments I really enjoy exploring, and I'm referring completely to the layouts, not the aesthetics. I thought this was by far the weakest part of the game, and I did not enjoy climbing or grappling or wandering around in circles. Also, the less said about Expedition 33's platforming challenges, the better. What a misstep. I can't tell you how many times my character, who can fly, fell off a log because you can't change the camera angle and have to move at a 10-degree slant. Stupid. Finally, the combat. The combat system is the real meat of the game. Most of your hours spent with Expedition 33 will be spent in combat. How much you like the game will largely depend on how you feel about the combat and about turn-based combat in general. I do like turn-based combat, but I have mixed feelings about Expedition 33's spin on the format. Expedition 33's main innovation is that it makes the opponent's turn the most interesting and important part of combat by allowing you to parry, dodge, and hop over enemies' attacks. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. On the one hand, I felt like I was continuously defaulting to the same offensive strategies, and the only difference from fight to fight was the parry timing, which pulled focus from the turn-based strategy aspect. On the other hand, I do like action commands being mixed with turn-based strategy, and I think it addresses an important genre problem. So, without action commands, you could imagine the combat in these games as a game of chess, completely strategic with perfect information. But as you become stronger, some of the combat encounters start to become mismatches. So imagine a mid to late game encounter as a game of chess where you have a full set, but your opponent is down to a king and a knight. You are obviously destined to win this encounter, but it will still take quite a few moves to play out, and that's boring. If this were an action game, you would murder that enemy in one hit and move on with your life. But because this is turn-based gameplay, even though you can math out the next 10 turns of combat and see that your win is inevitable, you still have to sit there and click buttons until it happens. This is a major pitfall that plagues many turn-based games because it sucks out all the tension and makes the main activity of the game tedious. The inverse of this situation is also possible, where the game is stacked against you to such a degree that victory feels impossible. So how do you keep these situations interesting and engaging? The main way is by making the outcomes of your decisions variable, either by luck, as in something like Pokemon, where moves have a random chance to miss or to proc additional effects, or by action commands, as in Paper Mario, Sea of Stars, or Expedition 33. So back to the chess analogy, your queen might fall short of her intended target without a perfect action command, or your knight's attempt to capture could depend on a well-timed button press. That way, dramatic upsets are possible, and every turn requires concentration no matter what. So I do like the action commands here, but I guess I wish they were more incorporated into the offensive phase of combat instead of making combat so defense-oriented. I think it works the best in boss fights, where you really feel like you're barely holding on. One last note about the combat, Expedition 33 absolutely understands how to make fights, especially boss fights, cinematic experiences, and that matters. Some of the boss fights are truly epic, and that makes victory all the sweeter. As you can probably tell, I liked Expedition 33, but it's not without its issues. It won't go down as one of my favorites, but I have mad respect for Sandfall Interactive for making something so creative that connected with so many people. I guess the highest compliment I can pay is that Expedition 33 takes you on a journey you can't forget, and I'm glad so many people have gotten to experience that journey. Number 2, Celeste. You can put away les fourches à foin, that's French for pitchforks, because I'm not necessarily saying this is a better game than Expedition 33, but Madeleine's Journey is a more pure experience, a much tighter package, and most importantly, a game I feel confident I'll still be recommending in 10 years' time. Celeste is an amazing game in a genre that I feel pretty whatever about. I'm not against 2D platformers, but I think it's a genre in which it's difficult to stand out. To me, good 2D platformers represent fun and escapism. Brainless in the best possible way, but not usually the kinds of games that stick with you after the fact. That's mostly true of Celeste for me. I do think the story has a positive message, and if anything has stuck with me ever since I first played, it's this banger of a soundtrack. But the gameplay in Celeste is so technically good, and the overall experience is pretty near flawless. Celeste tells the story of a girl named Madeline, who is determined to overcome her anxiety by reaching the summit of Mount Celeste, which is a real mountain in Canada, by the way, although I'm assuming the real mountain doesn't feature as much platforming, or as many strawberries. This is accomplished through a series of minimal, difficult, but bite-sized platforming challenges that, according to the devs, were designed to give players the same concentrated dose of effort and problem-solving as actual bouldering problems. Madeline's abilities consist of running, jumping, a limited ability to climb walls, and a mid-air dash, which are very easy to wrap your mind around, but allow for some really deep design. As Madeline makes her way up the mountain, she encounters the enigmatic Granny, the proprietor of an abandoned hotel, and a fellow hiker from Seattle called Theo. She also begins to experience anxiety and panic attacks, and eventually encounters a nightmare version of herself, dubbed Badeline, who personifies her self-doubt and attempts to stop Madeline from reaching the summit. I feel like Celeste is a game that really deeply understood the player experience it was aiming for. Some games want to make you feel tense, frustrated, and beaten down, while others want to fill you with adrenaline or emotion or anxiety. Some games don't think that hard about the player experience, but Celeste at every turn wants to make you feel empowered, motivated, and encouraged. I mean, the literal theme of the game is overcoming inner adversity and self-doubt, and the game does a lot of little things to foster player confidence, like reminding you to breathe and making it clear that the optional strawberry collectibles serve no other purpose than to impress your friends. The digestible level format also does a lot to keep things breezy and avoid frustration. There are no grueling runbacks, and the reload time when you fall to your death is practically instantaneous, which makes for a near frictionless experience. And I can't talk about this game without mentioning the incredible soundtrack from Lena Raine, which is not only one of my favorite OSTs, but also makes you feel capable, energized, and determined. How could you ever give up on a level while this is playing in the background? Celeste is so well done, and it's one of those rare games that I think has real broad mass appeal. Those who come for the challenge won't be disappointed, and those more apprehensive will find these challenges more approachable than most. Those who come for the story will find a real gem with genuine heart, and those who prefer a focus on gameplay will discover a deep experience and a story that doesn't distract or get in the way of that experience. As a member of the masses myself, Celeste appeals to me, and even if it's not the type of game that could probably ever be my all-time favorite, it's a game I recommend more often than some of my all-time favorites. If you're a fan of platformers, you should definitely check this out. And even if you're not, this might be the one that wins you over. As the game itself says, you can do this. Before I get to my number one, it's time for honorable mentions, and there are a lot this time. By far the most successful games that start with C are the entire Call of Duty franchise, which I've played occasionally over the years. Probably the one I've played the most is Black Ops 2. It's fun, but if you've played one, you've played them all. And anyone who disputes that is not thinking about the full range of experiences you can have with video games. Let's see, there's a lot of good C games I talked about in my sci-fi indies video. Caves of Qud is a wild little post-apocalyptic RPG with a million possibilities that can play out. Cogmind is a good minimalist robot roguelike about scrapping yourself together from the parts of other bots. Code 7 is a hacking adventure game played with a keyboard that was way more thrilling than it had any right to be. Cocoon was a really cool puzzle game where you carry around miniature universes contained in glowing orbs, nest them inside one another, and zip between universes to solve puzzles. Crosscode is a Zelda-inspired action RPG set in a virtual game world. Pretty fun. I really liked Cryptark, which is a roguelike ship infiltration game where you have a limited budget each run to spend on weapons, ammo, and health. The way the ship systems are designed in Cryptark is also really cool. Citizen Sleeper is a fascinating economic and social RPG with dice rolls and really painful choices. Another good one is Carrion, where you play as a bloated, betentacled monster stalking a laboratory and violently murdering pixelated guards and scientists. Leaving sci-fi behind, Child of Light is a fun and visually stunning adventure about a lost princess who sets out to save the sun, moon, and stars. It combines Metroidvania elements with turn-based combat in a pretty fun package. I think I played this on the Wii U originally. I also really like Cook Serve Delicious, which puts you in charge of an up-and-coming restaurant in real time. You can choose your menu and serve up meals using keyboard hotkeys under increasingly severe time pressure. The gameplay in Cook Serve Delicious is a lot deeper than it looks, and upgrading your restaurant with new menu items, appliances, and other unlocks is very satisfying. I guess for fun, I'll throw in a dishonorable mention. I don't like Cult of the Lamb, kind of at all. I think once you get past the initial charm, it's a very shallow experience, with a lot of false or uninteresting choices and tedious gameplay. I don't have a lot of occasion on this channel to talk about games I don't like, because kinda what's the point, you know, if you don't have something nice to say. But Cult of the Lamb, boo. I think the Crusades and the cult management are equally boring. Sorry, cultists. But okay, here's the big ones. The 3 games I most considered putting in my top 5. First, Chrono Trigger. I've played Chrono Trigger. I like Chrono Trigger. I think it's funny, it's well written, it's got heart, and I think it holds up. It's also a game that's inspired many lesser copycats over the years. My problem here is mainly that I've fallen out of love with these kinds of RPGs. They're just so long, and the pacing is so slow, and I know the highs are high, they really are, but there's a lot of tedium in the valleys. If you're on the fence though because this is old, but you like RPGs, you should definitely play this. I mean, it's a good game. Cuphead is another game I considered. Cuphead is about a literal Cuphead and his brother Mugman who make a deal with the devil to harvest wayward souls, which they do by engaging in difficult 2D boss fights. The most striking thing about this game is the 1920s rubber hose animation, which was hand-drawn for the game. The boss fights and platforming in Cuphead are challenging and really well designed, but the animation and the soundtrack are the real selling points. I don't know, I like everything about this game, but for whatever reason, it's just not a game I deeply connected with. I kinda hate saying this, but Cuphead gave me that feeling of, yeah, I get it. And I know there is variety in the boss fights, and I know you could say the same thing about some other games I love, but I'm just missing an X factor here. I still think Cuphead is awesome and worth playing, but it's just not one of my games. Probably my number 6 C game is Crawl. Crawl is a multiplayer dungeon crawling party game, sort of, where one player controls an adventurer seeking to explore a monster-infested dungeon, level up, and defeat the dungeon boss. And up to 3 other players control spirits who can manifest as monsters, inhabit traps, and attempt to kill the solo player by any means possible. If any player manages to kill the hero, they themselves become the hero and begin to explore the dungeon. So it's one versus many where the one is constantly changing. The ultimate winner is the player who can eventually reach level 10 and slay the boss, which itself is controlled by the other players. When you die, your loot and level are saved, so potentially all players are slowly making progress towards the goal. It can get pretty rowdy with everyone trying to kill each other, and there's always the possibility of a dramatic comeback. Also, very satisfying to win when everyone is trying as hard as they can to stop you. Super unique and fun. I don't know, I'm kind of talking myself into putting Crawl, or even Cuphead, over Castlevania, but what's done is done. Oh yeah, there is one other game that I almost put on this list, and in fact it would have been my number 1 here, but after some deliberation I decided that it doesn't technically start with the letter C, so more on that in a future video. If you know, you know. But let's get this over with. Number 1, The Case of the Golden Idol. Case of the Golden Idol has continued to rise in my estimation, despite the fact that as a mystery game I can't really ever replay it. I made a video a while ago specifically about this game, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go check that out. But The Case of the Golden Idol is pretty much a straight deduction game in which you solve a series of alt history 18th century mysteries that span 50 years and all revolve around the titular Golden Idol. I don't know, man, I just love mysteries, and this has become one of my go-to recommends. Every case in the game presents a freeze-frame crime scene, which you can freely peruse, clicking on objects or characters to add topics to your word bank. Those words can then be plugged into sentences that answer questions posed by the case at hand. This is one of my favorite ways to solve video game mysteries. I think it's inherently satisfying to form sentences, and it's a good way to test your knowledge of the crime without giving too much away. I wouldn't say Case of the Golden Idol is too extreme of a brain burner, but you definitely have to investigate thoroughly and make some satisfying logical connections. This is a really difficult game to talk about without spoiling anything, but it's really good. Don't be fooled by the somewhat off-putting art style. This is a tightly designed and meticulously crafted game with a story that goes places you probably won't expect. The story of Golden Idol follows the Cloudsley family and their associates, highwaymen, politicians, cults, and rebels over a half-century of lying, stealing, and murder. At various points, you investigate a poisoning at a dinner party, a conflagratory will reading, a political assassination at a country estate, and a cult ritual in a hidden cave. Each incident is a standalone, self-contained case, but as the game unfolds, connections between cases slowly coalesce into a sinister overarching narrative. I won't spoil anything, but the story in Golden Idol is surprisingly good, and it comes together in a really satisfying way. There's also 2 DLC prequels, The Spider of Lanka and The Lemurian Vampire, which trace the fateful expedition to uncover the Golden Idol prior to the events of the main game. Both of these DLCs took the story in directions I wasn't expecting, and even if they didn't tie things together as neatly as the original story, they were even better and more complex from a deduction standpoint. As I said, this definitely isn't the most difficult deduction game I've ever played, but even if the cases never feel impenetrable, the mere act of wrapping your mind around the details of the case is enjoyable to me. Initially, every case hits you in the face with an overwhelming amount of information. You know, there's guys over here having a conversation, a dead body over there, cryptic notes and messages all over the place, keys, maps, title charts, diaries, potential murder weapons, and other stuff you don't have the context to identify. Lots of characters are holding onto unsigned notes from who knows what other characters. You have no idea how it all connects or what most of it means, but you do a once-over to get the 30,000-foot view. Then you make a second pass. This time, certain bits of information start to seem significant. You make note of a particular phrase, a character's height, or the exact shape of an unfamiliar object. The rules of a card game, a seating chart, or a tribal ritual start to make sense to you. By your third pass, you aren't clicking around randomly, but with intention. Double-checking alibis, connecting codes and keys, and cross-referencing letters and addressees. That feeling of everything coming together and the flood of eureka moments that follows is the reason I enjoy deduction games. And Case of the Golden Idol does it better than most. Honestly, they could make 50 more games with this format, and I would keep playing them. As long as there's new and interesting mysteries to unravel, this formula doesn't get old to me. It's also a very approachable format for a non-gamer. You don't need reflexes or hand-eye coordination, just a mouse and some good old-fashioned brain power. If you're someone who doesn't play a lot of video games, thanks for watching this video, I guess, but you could solve this mystery. And maybe that's what I respect the most about Case of the Golden Idol. There's so little fluff, and the game just lets the mystery and storytelling stand on its own. I've played other detective games with crazy high production values that don't come anywhere near the level of pure, unfiltered deduction that Golden Idol has to offer. Easily a top 10 mystery game for me, and probably, at least for now, my favorite C game. So there you have it, my top 5 C games. This was a difficult letter for me, and if I redid this list tomorrow or next year, it might look completely different. This might be a hot take, but for me personally, the letter C is probably a B tier letter. I enjoy all of these games and rate them critically, but none of them are among my all-time favorites. Which, of course, is my opinion. If you grew up with Castlevania, found the story of Celeste incredibly meaningful, or got a For Those Who Come After tattoo, that's awesome. And I'm glad you connected with those games. Maybe your favorite C game is a game I've never heard of, so if you're up for it, drop your top 5 C games in the comments. Next time, it's my top 5 D games, and I will tell you in advance, I think it's the most stacked letter in the alphabet, at least when it comes to the very niche subject of ranking video games by letter. If you want to check that out, it really helps when you subscribe to the channel. I'm definitely guilty of not subscribing to channels I watch all the time, but I've been trying to be better about it, since it literally takes 2 seconds, and it really does make a difference. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.